So, you want to learn about Suleiman the Magnificent, and you think that clicking on a video that openly admits it is a bad biography is going to teach you anything? It definitely won't, but I got like a puppet show and a couple of funny jokes in here, so you should keep watching anyway. Alright, so let's start with Justinian the Great of the Byzantine Empire, because Suleiman is basically just a cooler version of him. Both of them wanted to conquer Rome and control the entirety of the Mediterranean, but big surprise, kind of hard to do that in the span of like 50 years or however long Justinian ruled Byzantium. I'm not going to look it up because this video isn't about him and I do not care. By the time Justinian inherited the Roman Empire, it was a dysfunctional state comprising of just the eastern half and was besieged by barbarians from all sides. Needless to say, he had his work cut out for him if he wanted to conquer literally half of Europe. After stopping a riot that nearly destroyed Constantinople, Justinian started going off and reconquered North Africa. I say reconquered, but it was more like they just kind of invited Justinian in to take over because they still thought of themselves as Romans. They weren't. They didn't even live in Rome. That's literally the only thing you need to do to be called a Roman. Anyway, after that, Justinian sent his friend Belisarius to reconquer the city of Rome, which Justinian ruled for like 10 years until the Ostrogoths took it back. Then he didn't really do much of importance, or maybe he did. Again, I really do not care. Justinian kind of sucked. His empire started going downhill immediately after he died, and he marked the point in history where the Chad Roman Empire turned into the backwater that we call Byzantium. He was the last emperor to speak Latin as a first language and the last one to build cool things like the Hagia Sophia. To be fair, the downfall of the Byzantine Empire isn't Justinian's fault. In 1204, the Crusaders kind of sacked the city of Constantinople, which would allow the Sultanate of Rum to take over the Anatolian Peninsula. The Sultanate of Rum itself wouldn't rule Anatolia for that long, as the Mongols came in and just absolutely destroyed them. They barely put up a fight. After the Mongolian Empire collapsed, the region would be sent into chaos, with many warring states vying for power over the landmass. The Ottoman Empire would manage to outcompete all of the other warring states, and by 1453 they had taken over the Anatolian Peninsula, most of Greece, and Constantinople, turning it into Istanbul, not Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. And with that obligatory reference to They Might Be Giants out of the way, I think I can now start talking about Suleiman the Magnificent. Suleiman the Magnificent was born in Trebizond in the year 1494, where he was briefly governor when his grandfather was sultan, but after his father ascended to the throne, he would become governor of Mansia, which is a nice part of Turkey with a lot of tourism. It's kind of like North Dakota, except people actually want to live in Mansia and tourists unironically go on vacation there. Honestly, North Dakota, if the only way to get people to visit your state is to give them a free t-shirt that says best for last, you should just give up on tourism and stick to whatever it is you're good at. Anyway, after Suleiman's father, Selim I, died, Suleiman would rush to Istanbul with his half-best friend, half-Greek slave Ibrahim, and ascend to the throne. Right off the bat, Suleiman got to work. He built a mosque in honor of his father, and he pardoned all of his father's enemies. This, however, would make him look like a weak ruler, which would cause the governor of Syria to revolt, thinking that the governor of Egypt would be on his side. However, the governor of Egypt just kind of sat on the sidelines, waiting to see how the conflict would go before joining. After figuratively getting stabbed in the back by the governor of Egypt, the governor of Syria would literally be stabbed in the back by Suleiman. Once again, some idiot would underestimate the power of Suleiman. The king of Hungary, after seeing a new sultan had taken the throne, decided that it would be a good idea to murder the envoy that the Ottomans sent annually to collect tribute. Now, I have never personally had my envoy of diplomats murdered by a 14-year-old Hungarian king, but if I did, I'd probably be pretty upset. Suleiman was more than pretty upset. He was furious, and he was about to murder a whole lot of Hungarians. He took his massive army and giant cannons to the city of Belgrade and lit it up like there was no tomorrow. Needless to say, Hungary started paying their tribute again after that, and the Ottomans got to keep Belgrade. There seems to be a bit of a pattern of people underestimating just how much Suleiman could go off on him if they did him wrong. The Knights Templar are no exception to this rule. They'd been allowing pirates who attacked Ottoman ships to harbor safely on the island of Rhodes, which was between Anatolia and Egypt, causing a massive issue for the Ottomans, as that was one of their most profitable trade routes, and how the Ottomans transported most grain into the central part of their empire. In 1522, the Ottomans would lay siege to the island, and no Christian nation would come to their aid, as 5 years prior, some guy in Germany nailed a really long piece of paper to a church door, and everyone in Europe was still a bit upset about it. The Ottomans outnumbered the knights 10-1, so being the kind man Suleiman was, after blowing several holes into the walls of their fortress, he offered them terms of surrender. But the knights responded by showing him a signed treaty from his father Selim, saying that they could live on the island without fear of Ottoman attack. Suleiman tore that letter up and continued to bomb the island with massive cannons until eventually the knights surrendered. The knights were allowed peaceful evacuation off the island, and anyone who decided to stay wouldn't be taxed for 2 years and could leave whenever they wanted to go to Malta. In 1523, Suleiman would promote his now 100% best friend and 0% Greek slave Ibrahim to Grand Vizier, which sort of peeved Amen Pasha, who really wanted to get that job. To make up for it, Suleiman appointed him as governor of Egypt, where he instantly rebelled, killing a bunch of Janissaries and causing a second revolution in Syria. Needless to say, he wasn't alive for very long after that. In 1526, the Ottomans got involved in the Italian War of 1521 to 1526, putting an end to the conflict through serious diplomatic maneuvers on behalf of France that caused a scandal in Europe as a Christian nation had allied with a Muslim one to attack another Christian nation. During the Italian Wars, the Ottomans would invade Hungary, and at the Battle of Mohacs, they would completely destroy the Hungarian army and kill the Hungarian king, Louis II. This would leave a power vacuum in Hungary, causing a war between Ferdinand of Austria and John I of Hungary. As they fought for power, Ferdinand would eventually come out on top. However, this wouldn't sit too well with the Ottomans, and despite the fact that it took Suleiman 2 years to react to this event, he would send his army into Hungary to help John retake his throne, and once and for all defeat his Habsburg rival. Ferdinand was outnumbered 7-1, and it wasn't looking too good for him. This would have been an easy win for Suleiman if he hadn't lost all of his cannons marching along the bogs of the Danube River. After sieging the city for several months, Suleiman realized there would be no way for him to break the walls without his cannons, so he had to abandon the siege and retreat to Hungary. Ferdinand, not learning his lesson from the last time he faced Suleiman's army, would follow Suleiman back into Hungary, recapturing a very small amount of land before the Turks mobilized and stopped his advances. Suleiman was planning on sieging Vienna again, but before he could march his army to the city, he had signed peace with the Austrians, recognizing their minuscule gains whilst also making sure the Austrians would renounce their claims on Hungary. So, why invade Persia? Well, they got oil, but that isn't very useful to a 16th century Turk. They got very good hummus, but again, no reason to invade just for that. You can just go to a grocery store. Or maybe it's because those damn Safavids are plotting to ally with the Habsburgs to destroy the Ottoman Empire. That was the justification that Suleiman used to invade Persia, but just like America in 2003, the justification for war in the Middle East was made up. Even though the Safavids did send an envoy to Austria to negotiate an alliance, the Habsburgs saw what kind of scandal happens when you ally with an Islamic nation when France did it, and they need good PR to stay head of the Holy Roman Empire, so they would have never allied with the Safavids even if their lives depended on it. Even though the basis for the invasion was illegitimate, in 1532 Suleiman marched into Iraq with his best friend Ibrahim and 200,000 men against Shah Temset's 600,000 men. Suleiman thought this would be quite an easy victory and they would be able to capture the entirety of the Safavid Empire, but Temset and his army evaded them, using a scorched earth policy to slowly starve the Ottoman army. Suleiman was forced to retreat back to Anatolia after capturing Iraq. Back on the home front, things were not going very well. Remember how about a minute ago Ibrahim was still alive? Well, bad news, he isn't anymore. He died on the 14th of March, 1536, not of natural causes, mind you, but of murder. It's a real whodunit, and lucky enough, we have actual footage from the 1600s of the conversation Suleiman and Ibrahim had shortly before his death. Gonna go ahead and roll that footage, please enjoy. Hey, yo, my main man Salami, check out these mad Turkish yen I got from our campaign in Iraq. Wow, that's so cool, Ibrahim, but I'm a little busy right now reorganizing the territories we conquered in the Middle East into a new province. Whoa, I just got the sickest idea, Suleiman. What would that be, Ibrahim? What if, and just hear me out, you made me Sultan of Iraq? Are you suggesting that I give you your own country to rule? No. It's totally different than that. Client state or something, vassal, whatever you want to call it. But listen. Just think about it, bro. I'm off to go flex my immense wealth and power that I've been gaining under your leadership to the other members of your court, because my arrogance is getting too out of hand and nothing will stop it growing unless someone kills me or something, but who would ever do that? Later, best friend. Hearing of this, Suleiman's wife Roxolana thought that it would be completely justifiable to murder Ibrahim, and after Ibrahim was dead, Roxolana would replace him as Suleiman's head political advisor. In 1539, the Ottomans would get into a long conflict with Portugal that would last 20 years. Although I only really care about the last 5, I'm not going to talk about the land war in Ethiopia because it's kind of stupid and not even Suleiman cared that much. What is important is that in 1544, the Portuguese sunk the Ottomans' navy in the Indian Ocean, causing the Ottomans to no longer be competitive in the Indian Ocean trade, and after a failed siege of Bahrain, a treaty was signed that would allow Portugal to control all sea trade routes around the Cape of Good Hope, and the Ottomans to control all land trade in the region and all sea trade through the Red Sea, which was a lot cheaper and safer than going all the way around Africa. Jumping back to 1548, the Shah of the Safavids was still giving the Ottomans a bit of trouble, so with the help of France, the Ottomans would attempt to defeat him once and for all. Shah Temset would continue to use his scorched earth tactics, and Suleiman just couldn't catch him. But he would end up taking over a lot of Armenia and Georgia, as well as securing peace in eastern Anatolia. By the 1550s, Suleiman was starting to get old, and there were rumors going around that people wanted him replaced with his eldest son and heir to the throne, Sihad Mustafa, who was very popular amongst the army and the people of the empire. During Suleiman's third campaign in Persia, which was very similar to the other two, Suleiman's new Grand Vizier, Rustem Pasha, convinced the Sultan that his eldest son was going to try and kill him and take the throne for himself. So Rustem Pasha lured the Sultan's eldest son into their camp where they would plot to kill him, leaving the Sultan with just 2 sons and his wife. In 1558, Suleiman's wife Roxolana would die of natural causes, leaving him with just his 2 kids. Suleiman's youngest child, Seyzed Bayezid, could see the writing on the wall, and after he fell into disfavor with his father, he knew that his days were numbered, so he decided to flee to the Safavid Empire, where he was received well and the Shah would allow him to live a life of luxury. This, however, would backfire against him after Suleiman's third war in Persia, where relations between the Safavids and the Ottomans started to improve, and Suleiman would pay Shah Temset 400,000 gold coins to hand over his son, who he promptly executed. As Suleiman entered his 60s, he was unable to lead his military campaigns like he did in the past, and in 1564 he would get into another conflict with the Portuguese in the Indian Ocean at the request of Akh, a small sultanate on the island of Sumatra. Suleiman would send a small expeditionary force that would successfully help the island nation repel a Portuguese invasion. In 1564, the Sultan would attack the island of Malta, which was the new home to the Knights Templar, which he had kicked off of the island of Rhodes in the 1530s. The Sultan's army killed about half of the island's citizens and almost destroyed all of their major cities until Spanish reinforcements caused them to retreat. Suleiman's last campaign would be against the Habsburgs, where he would once again try to take Vienna. Unfortunately, on his way through Hungary during the Battle of Szesvitir, just before the Ottomans had achieved victory, the Sultanate would die in his tent, causing the army to retreat. His Grand Vizier would keep his death a secret until they reached Istanbul, where it would be entombed in the Suhumahia Mosque. The mosque is a major landmark in the city of Istanbul to this day and is a part of the historic areas of Istanbul UNESCO World Heritage Site. Suleiman's legacy lives on through modern Islamic law. Sharia law, which was laid out by the Quran, covers many things. There are still a lot of situations that aren't addressed by the book. Throughout history, most of them have been dealt with on a case-by-case basis, but Suleiman standardized these laws that aren't directly covered by the Quran, which are followed by many Islamic nations to this day. He also improved a lot of Islamic cities like Baghdad, Mecca, and Damascus. He built new mosques, bridges, and aqueducts. He also caused the golden age of Turkish art by commissioning many pieces of art done throughout the city of Istanbul, blending Arabic, traditional Turkish, and European art styles into the new Ottoman art style that would be prominent in the empire for the next few hundred years. Finally, despite Constantinople being conquered by the Turks in 1453, it wasn't really a Turkish city until Suleiman spent a large amount of money improving the city, turning it into Istanbul, paving over the Byzantine architecture with new art in the Ottoman style that he helped create, leaving a lasting impact on the older parts of the city that can still be seen to this day.
Constantinople, now it's Istanbul, now Constantinople, been a long time gone. Constantinople, now it's Turkish delight on a moonlit night. Every gal in Constantinople lives in Istanbul, now Constantinople. So if you've a date in Constantinople, she'll be waiting in Istanbul. Even old New York was once New Amsterdam. Why they changed it, I can't say. People just liked it better that way. So take me back to Constantinople. No, you can't go back to Constantinople. Been a long time gone. Constantinople, why did Constantinople get the works? That's nobody's business but the Turks. Istanbul, 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 Istanbul. Even old New York was once New Amsterdam. Why they changed it, I can't say. You just liked it better that way. Istanbul was Constantinople, now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. Been a long time gone, a Constantinople. Why did Constantinople get the works? That's nobody's business but the Turks.